The meeting room on Galactic Station Prime buzzed with excitement. Representatives from dozens of alien species sat around a massive circular table, their various breathing apparatus and environmental suits creating a symphony of mechanical sounds. At the center of the room, a holographic display showed a small blue planet spinning slowly in space. Sol 3, announced Director Veltar, his 6 arms gesturing toward the image, also known as Earth, the newest member world to be contacted by our Galactic Education Consortium. A ripple of curiosity moved through the assembled delegates. Earth had been the subject of much debate in recent months. The planet's classification as a Class 3 deathworld had made most species hesitant to establish any contact at all. Only the military had shown interest, and their reports were deeply concerning. "I must protest this proposal," spoke General Crixon, his metallic voice echoing through the chamber. "Our preliminary scans show this world to be incredibly dangerous. The atmospheric composition alone would kill most of our species within minutes. The gravity is crushing. The weather patterns are violent beyond measure." Director Veltar nodded, slowly. "Your concerns are noted, General. However, the Education Consortium exists to promote understanding between species. These humans have responded to our communications with remarkable enthusiasm for learning. They have already sent detailed information about their world and culture." A delegate from the crystalline Vorthak species stood up, her body catching and reflecting the room's light. "What do we actually know about these humans? Are they as dangerous as their world suggests?" The holographic display changed to show images of humans. The assembled aliens studied the strange bipedal creatures with obvious confusion. They looked so soft and fragile, with no visible natural weapons or armor. Their bodies seemed impossibly delicate for creatures that lived on such a harsh world. "According to their own data," Director Veltar continued, "humans are remarkably adaptable. They live in nearly every environment on their planet, from frozen wastelands to burning deserts. They have developed complex technologies and seem eager to share knowledge with other species." An aquatic Delphinian delegate spoke next, her voice bubbling through her water-filled communication device. "How do such fragile-looking creatures survive on a death world? Their skin appears to have no protective qualities at all." "That is precisely what we hope to learn," replied the director. "The consortium has approved a limited exchange program. 5 of our brightest students will visit Earth for a standard learning cycle. In return, Earth will send 2 of their students to observe our educational systems." The room erupted in concerned chatter. Species who had never agreed on anything suddenly found themselves united in worry about this proposal. The very idea of sending their young to a death world seemed reckless, beyond belief. General Crixon stood again, his massive form towering over the others. "This is madness. We are talking about a planet where the very air burns through most breathing systems, where the gravity alone would crush our students, where primitive life forms produce toxins that could kill our most advanced medical patients. All proper safety measures will be taken," Director Veltar assured the group. "The students will be equipped with the finest protective gear. The humans have agreed to establish a controlled research station in what they describe as a safe area of their world." A silicon-based Terralite delegate laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "Safe by their standards? These are creatures who live on a world that tries to kill them every moment of every day. Their idea of safe might still be lethal to us." Despite the concerns, the vote proceeded. The lure of scientific discovery and the potential benefits of Understanding such an unusual species proved too tempting for many delegates. By a narrow margin, the exchange program was approved. Within days, applications poured in from young aliens across the galaxy. The opportunity to be the first to study. Humans up close attracted the brightest and most curious minds from every species. After careful selection, 5 students were chosen. Kale came from the ice world of Vorthak Prime. His crystalline body could withstand extreme cold, but was vulnerable to heat and pressure changes. He had spent years studying impossible life forms, and was eager to understand how anything could survive on Earth. Nira belonged to the aquatic delphinian species from the oceanic moon colonies. Her people lived in carefully controlled underwater cities where temperature and pressure never varied. She specialized in biological adaptation and was fascinated by the idea of life existing in such chaotic conditions. Vex was a silicon-based terralite from the asteroid mining stations. His rock-like body was incredibly durable, but his species had never encountered organic chemistry beyond the simplest forms. The complex carbon-based life of Earth was a complete mystery to him. Zin was an energy being from the luminary species, who lived in the calm upper atmospheres of gas giants. Her people existed as pure electromagnetic energy and found the violent electromagnetic activity around Earth both terrifying and intriguing. Kor came from the underground hive worlds of the Chitin species. His insectoid form was built for tunneling through solid rock, but his people had never encountered the kind of chaotic surface conditions that Earth displayed. The 5 students gathered at the launch station, each wearing specialized survival suits designed to keep them alive on the Deathworld they were about to visit. Their excitement was mixed with genuine fear. Every simulation they had run showed Earth to be more dangerous than most military training grounds. "Remember," their supervisor told them, "you are not just students on this mission, you are ambassadors for your entire species. What you learn about humans could shape our relationship with them for generations to come." The journey to Earth took several weeks aboard a heavily shielded research vessel. During the trip, the students studied everything they could about their destination. The more they learned, the more impossible it seemed that anything could live there. The planet experienced regular storms that generated more electrical energy than most weapons. Its surface was constantly changing due to something called weather that moved vast amounts of water and air around with devastating force. The very ground shifted and moved due to geological activity that would destroy most civilized worlds. Most terrifying of all was the life itself. Earth was covered in millions of different species, each one perfectly adapted to survive in conditions that would kill most galactic life forms instantly. The students read about creatures that lived in boiling water, others that thrived in freezing cold, and still others that could survive in the vacuum of space. How do the humans fit into all this? Kyle wondered aloud as they studied the data. They seem to have no special adaptations, no armor, no natural weapons, no ability to survive extreme conditions. "Maybe that is their adaptation," suggested Nira. "Maybe they survive by being able to live anywhere instead of being perfectly suited to one place." As their ship approached Earth, the students got their first real look at the blue and white planet that was about to become their home for the next several months. It looked beautiful from space, but they all knew that beauty hid deadly secrets. Their human guides were waiting for them at the research station. Jiho was a marine biology student from Seoul National University, while Yuna studied environmental science at the same school. Both young humans smiled warmly as they greeted their alien visitors, seemingly unaware that they lived on one of the most dangerous worlds in the galaxy. "Welcome to Earth," Jiho said cheerfully. "We cannot wait to show you around our home." 5 alien students exchanged nervous glances. They were about to discover exactly why Earth was called a death world, and why the humans who lived there were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The research station sat in what the humans called the Korean countryside, surrounded by rolling green hills and forests. To the 5 alien students, it looked like a fortress designed to protect them from the hostile world outside. Thick walls, filtered air systems, and pressure regulators made it possible for them to survive without their bulky environmental suits. Jiho and Yuna moved around the station with casual ease, breathing the unfiltered air as if it were completely normal. They wore simple clothing that provided no protection whatsoever, just thin fabric that would not stop even the mildest environmental hazard. "The station is nice," Yuna said, checking readings on various monitoring devices. "But we thought you might want to see some real Earth nature. There is a beautiful forest trail just outside." The alien students looked at each other with alarm. Through the station's reinforced windows, they could see the beautiful forest that Yuna mentioned. It looked like a green wall of unknown dangers, filled with moving shadows and strange sounds. "Is it safe?" asked Kyle, his crystalline body reflecting his nervous energy in quick flashes of light. Jiho laughed, thinking the question was about wild animals. "Oh yes, very safe. There are no large predators in this area, just normal forest life." Normal forest life. The phrase sent chills through the alien students. Everything on Earth was deadly by galactic standards. So what did humans consider normal? After much preparation and checking of their portable life support systems, the students agreed to a short walk outside. Their environmental suits were the most advanced technology their species had developed, designed to keep them alive in the vacuum of space. Surely they could handle a simple walk in what humans called a safe forest. The moment they stepped outside, the assault began. The atmospheric pressure hit them like a physical blow. Even through their suits, Kale could feel the crushing weight of Earth's thick atmosphere. His home world had air so thin it was barely detectable, and this felt like being buried alive. Nira's sensors went crazy trying to analyze the air composition. "How much oxygen is in this atmosphere?" she asked, her voice shaking. "About 21%, Yuna replied cheerfully. "Perfect for breathing. 21% oxygen." The number made Vex's rocky form actually shudder. His people considered anything above 5% oxygen to be explosive. This atmosphere was basically rocket fuel waiting to ignite. "And you breathe this directly?" Kor asked, his insectoid mandibles clicking nervously. "Without any filtering or processing?" "Of course," Jiho said, taking a deep breath to demonstrate. "It is just air that would burn through their respiratory systems like acid. Just air that was so chemically active it would corrode most known metals." The humans were walking around breathing what most species considered a dangerous industrial chemical. As they walked down the forest path, Yuna began pointing out what she called interesting plants and animals. To the alien students, every single thing she showed them was a nightmare of evolutionary impossibility. "Look at this spider," she said, gently picking up a small brown creature from a web between 2 trees. "It is completely harmless to humans." The spider sat calmly in her bare hand, its 8 legs moving slowly across her unprotected skin. Nira nearly fainted when her suit's scanners detected the chemical composition of the creature's venom. "That spider produces neurotoxins," she whispered. "Its bite would paralyze my entire nervous system." Yuna looked surprised. Really? It is just a garden spider. Children play with these all the time. Children. Human offspring played with creatures that could kill most galactic species instantly. The concept was so alien that Kor's translator actually struggled to process it. Jiho noticed their distress and tried to be reassuring. Do not worry about the wildlife here. Everything in this forest is perfectly normal. See this moss? He pointed to green growth covering a fallen log. It is totally safe to touch. Vex extended a sensor toward the moss and immediately pulled back in alarm. That plant is producing sulfuric compounds. It would eat through most organic materials. Moss does. That, Jiho agreed. It breaks down dead wood to get nutrients. It is just part of how forests work. Just part of how forests work. The casual way the humans described these deadly processes made the students realize something terrifying. This was not a dangerous environment to humans. This was normal. This was safe. This was what they considered a pleasant place to take. A relaxing walk. Zin, who existed as electromagnetic energy, was having her own crisis. Earth's magnetic field was chaotic and violent compared to the stable gas giant atmospheres her people inhabited. Solar radiation bombarded the planet constantly, and somehow life not only survived but thrived in this electromagnetic storm. How do you handle the radiation? She asked Yuna. What radiation? Yuna replied, genuinely confused. The electromagnetic radiation from your star. It is constantly hitting this planet with enough energy to disrupt most electronic systems. Yuna thought for a moment. Oh, you mean sunlight? We need that to live. Plants use it for photosynthesis, and we get vitamin D from it. They needed it to live. These humans required constant bombardment by radiation that would kill most galactic species. They had turned a deadly energy source into a biological necessity. As they continued walking, every step revealed new horrors disguised as normal life. Yuna pointed out flowers that produced chemicals toxic enough to use as weapons. Jiho showed them insects that could survive temperatures that would melt most alien technologies. Birds flew overhead, somehow able to navigate in Earth's chaotic magnetic field without any artificial assistance. This tree is over 200 years old, Yuna said, patting the bark of a massive oak. It has survived droughts, floods, storms, fires, and still keeps growing. 200 years of constant assault by a deathworld environment, and the tree was thriving. The students began to understand that Earth life did not just survive despite the dangerous conditions. It survived because of them. The constant challenges made everything stronger, more adaptable, more resilient. How long do humans live? Asked Kyle, dreading the answer. Usually 70 to 80 years, Jiho replied. Some people live to be over 100. 100 years on a death world. The alien students could barely survive one day with all their advanced technology, and humans lived for an entire century exposed to these conditions. The walk continued. For an hour, each minute bringing new revelations about the impossible nature of Earth life. They saw a butterfly that migrated thousands of kilometers using only internal navigation systems. They watched ants carrying objects many times their own weight. They observed a squirrel leaping between trees with no safety equipment whatsoever. Everything. Here is an extremophile, Vex said quietly to the other students. Every single life form we have encountered would be considered a marvel of biological engineering on any other world. And the humans think it is all completely normal, Nira added, watching Yuna casually brush away a bee that had landed on her arm. The bee's sting contained enough venom to cause serious injury to most alien species, but Yuna treated it like a minor annoyance. As they returned to the research station, the students walked in stunned silence. They had expected to find a dangerous world that somehow supported life. Instead, they had found a world where life itself was the danger. Every creature, every plant, every microorganism was a highly evolved survival machine, perfectly adapted to conditions that would sterilize most worlds. And the humans walked through it all like it was nothing special. That was a nice, easy walk, Jiho said as they reached the station. Tomorrow we can show you some of the more interesting areas. More interesting areas. The students exchanged terrified glances. If this was what humans considered a boring, safe place for a gentle walk, what would they consider interesting? That night, as they sat in the safety of the research station, the 5 alien students began writing their first reports back to their homeworlds. They struggled to find words to describe what they had experienced. How could they explain that? They had visited what humans called a safe place and found it more dangerous than most military testing grounds. They were beginning to understand why Earth was classified as a death world, but they were also beginning to suspect that the classification was inadequate. Earth was not just a world where death was possible. It was a world where everything was actively trying to kill everything else, and somehow, impossibly, life had not just survived, but flourished, and the humans who lived here thought it was all perfectly normal. The morning started peacefully enough. The 5 alien students had spent the night in the research station, trying to process everything they had learned during their first day on Earth. Through the reinforced windows, they watched the sunrise paint the sky in brilliant colors. Even the daily appearance of Earth's star was more violent than anything on their homeworlds, but they were beginning to accept that intensity was normal here. Yuna was checking weather reports on her communication device when she frowned slightly. "Looks like we might get some rain this afternoon," she mentioned to Jiho while preparing breakfast. "Rain?" asked Nira, who was struggling to eat the specially prepared food that would not poison her aquatic biology. "What is rain?" Jiho looked surprised by the question. "Water falls from the sky. It happens when clouds get too heavy. Very normal weather." Water falling from the sky sounded strange, but not necessarily dangerous to the alien students. Their homeworlds had various forms of precipitation, though usually much gentler than anything Earth produced. They decided to continue with their planned activities for the day. Around midday, the students noticed the sky beginning to change. Large gray masses were forming overhead, blocking out the sun. The atmospheric pressure, already crushing by galactic standards, began to fluctuate in ways that made their environmental suits work harder to maintain stable conditions. "Storm coming," Yuna observed, still completely calm. "Looks like it might be a good one." A good one. The humans actually seemed pleased that dangerous weather was approaching. The alien students watched in growing alarm as the gray masses in the sky grew darker and larger, blocking out more and more light. Kyle's crystalline structure was particularly sensitive to pressure changes. His body began to vibrate slightly as the atmospheric pressure continued to drop. "How much pressure variation is normal during these rain events?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "Oh, it can drop quite a bit during a storm," Jiho replied casually. "Sometimes enough to make your ears pop." Enough to make ears pop was apparently considered minor to humans. For Kale's people, such pressure changes could cause their crystalline bodies to crack and shatter. His environmental suit was working overtime to maintain safe pressure around him. The first sign of real trouble came when the wind began to pick up. What started as a gentle breeze quickly became a howling force that shook the research station. The alien students watched in horror as trees outside bent at impossible angles, their branches whipping back and forth with enough force to break most known materials. "This is normal?" Vex asked, his rocky form actually trembling as the station's walls creaked under the wind pressure. "Just a spring storm," Una said, checking the weather readings again. "Wind speeds are only about 60 kilometers per hour. Not too bad. Only 60 kilometers per hour." The casual way she said it made the students realize that humans considered this mild weather. Most of their species' strongest storms never reached such velocities. Then the rain began. The first drops hit the station's roof like bullets, each impact creating a sharp crack that made the alien students jump. Within minutes, the gentle pattering became a roar as billions of water droplets hammered down from the sky with terrifying force. Core's insectoid hearing was particularly sensitive, and the noise was overwhelming. "How much water is falling?" he asked, his mandibles clicking rapidly in distress. "Looks like about 2 centimeters per hour, Jiho said, reading his weather device. "Pretty steady rainfall." 2 centimeters per hour meant that the sky was literally dumping enough water to flood most civilized areas. The alien students watched through the windows as the peaceful landscape outside transformed into a water-covered battleground. Streams formed instantly where none had existed before. Plants bent under the weight of the falling water. The very air became thick with moisture that their suits had to work constantly to filter out. But the worst was yet to come. The first lightning bolt split the sky with a crack that shook the entire research station. For a moment, the world outside was illuminated in stark white light, showing the full fury of the storm. Then came the thunder. The sound hit like a physical blow, rattling every surface in the station and sending vibrations through the ground. Itself, Zin, whose energy-based biology was particularly sensitive to electromagnetic disturbances, actually flickered in and out of visibility as the electrical discharge interfered with her form. The electromagnetic pulse from that lightning. "Bolt," she said weakly. "It carried more energy than most of our weapon systems." "Lightning is pretty powerful," Una agreed. "That is why we stay inside during storms like this." Stay inside. The humans had developed the simple strategy of hiding from weather that could power their cities. But they spoke about it as if it were a minor inconvenience, like avoiding a small puddle. Another lightning bolt struck, closer this time. The electromagnetic pulse made every piece of alien technology in the station flicker and reset. Core's suit briefly lost power, and he experienced several seconds of breathing the raw atmosphere before his backup systems kicked in. Those few seconds left him gasping and choking, his biology completely unable to process Earth's oxygen-rich air. "Are you okay?" Jiho asked, showing genuine concern for the first time since the aliens had arrived. "Your atmosphere," Core managed to say. "It burns." Jiho looked confused. "Burns? But it is just air. We breathe it all the time." The storm continued for 3 hours. 3 hours of constant bombardment by wind, water, and electrical energy that would have devastated most civilized worlds. The alien students huddled in the research station, their environmental suits pushed to their absolute limits, just to keep them alive through what humans considered normal weather. Nira's aquatic biology was particularly troubled by the storm. Her people lived in carefully controlled underwater environments where temperature and pressure never varied by more than tiny fractions. The chaotic energy of the storm made her feel like she was being attacked by the planet itself. "How often do these storms happen?" she asked, hoping the answer would be rarely. "During spring and summer, maybe once or twice a week," Yuna replied. "Though this is actually pretty mild. You should see a real thunderstorm once or twice a week." The humans lived under regular assault by weather systems that carried enough energy to power most galactic civilizations, and they called this one mild. When the storm finally began to pass, the students watched in amazement as Jiho and Yuna prepared to go outside again. "The air will be so fresh after the rain," Yuna said happily. "Perfect for another walk." "You are going outside?" Kale asked in disbelief. "Into the aftermath of that destruction?" "It is just wet," Jiho said, putting on a thin, waterproof jacket. "Rain is good for the plants." The humans walked outside into air that was still crackling with residual electrical energy, where the ground was soaked with billions of liters of water that had fallen from the sky, where the very atmosphere was still chaotic from the storm's passage. They breathed deeply and smiled, as if the dangerous conditions were somehow pleasant. Through the station windows, the alien students watched their human guides walk casually through puddles of water that could have filled small lakes. They stepped over fallen branches that could have crushed vehicles. They moved through air that still held enough electrical charge to interfere with advanced technology, and they looked happy about it. "Storms are amazing," Yuna called back to the station. "You can feel how alive everything becomes afterward." Alive. The humans did not just survive their world's violent weather. They enjoyed it. They found beauty in atmospheric chaos that would terrify most galactic species. They walked voluntarily into conditions that the alien students could barely endure inside their advanced protective suits. That evening, as the alien students sat in the safety of the research station, they realized they had learned something fundamental about humans. These creatures did not simply tolerate their dangerous environment. They had made peace with it. They had found ways to appreciate its violent beauty. "Tomorrow," Jiho announced cheerfully, "if the weather is nice, we can visit the lake. Or if another storm comes through, we can watch it from the observation deck." Storms are always fascinating to watch. The alien students looked at each other with growing understanding. Humans did not just live on a death world. They had fallen in love with it. They found joy in the same forces that would kill most other species. Weather that could power cities was something they called beautiful. Atmospheric chaos that interfered with advanced technology was something they called refreshing. Electrical discharges that carried more energy than most weapons were something they called fascinating. The students were beginning to realize that understanding humans meant understanding a species that had chosen to thrive in the most dangerous environment they could imagine. And somehow, impossibly, they had learned to call it home. The day after the storm, Jiho and Yuna decided to take their alien guests on what they called an educational field trip to study Earth's biodiversity. The forest looked different after the rain, greener and more alive somehow. Water dripped from every surface, and the air was thick with moisture and strange organic scents. "The ecosystem really comes alive after a good rain," Yuna explained as they walked along a muddy path. "All the microorganisms in the soil become more active. You can almost smell the life in the air." The alien students exchanged worried glances inside their environmental suits. If they could smell life in the air, that meant biological organisms were somehow getting through their filtration systems. That should have been impossible with their advanced technology. They came to a small stream that had been swollen by the previous night's rain. The water ran clear and clean-looking, bubbling over rocks and fallen logs. To the humans, it looked perfectly natural and beautiful. To the alien students, it looked like a flowing river of potential death. This stream connects to the main river. System, Jiho said, kneeling down beside the water. It is home to hundreds of different species. Hundreds of different species in one small stream. Most alien worlds were proud to have dozens of species on their entire planets. The biological diversity of Earth was overwhelming to contemplate. Nira, whose aquatic biology made her particularly interested in water systems, moved closer to examine the stream. Her suit's sensors immediately began analyzing the water composition, and what they found made her backup systems activate in alarm. "This water," she said, her voice shaking, "it contains thousands of different biological organisms." "Of course it does," Yuna replied cheerfully. "Stream water is full of life. Bacteria, algae, small fish, insects, all sorts of things. Thousands of different organisms in water that the humans seem to consider perfectly normal. Nira's people lived in carefully sterilized environments where even a single foreign microorganism could cause system-wide contamination. The idea of water naturally containing so much life was terrifying. "Is it safe?" Nira asked, though she was afraid she already knew the answer. "Safe for what?" Jiho asked. "Fish live in it. Birds drink from it. It is just normal stream water." Normal stream water that contained more biological diversity than most space stations. Nira watched in fascination and horror as Jiho casually dipped his hand into the water, letting the organism-rich liquid run through his fingers. "You are touching it directly?" she asked in disbelief. "Sure," Jiho said. "It is just water. Just water that would contaminate her entire biological system if even a drop got through her suit's seals. Nira's people could only survive in carefully controlled aquatic environments where every microorganism was known and managed. The chaotic biological soup that humans called normal water would kill her within hours." As they continued examining the stream ecosystem, Yuna decided to collect some water samples for analysis. She had brought simple plastic containers for this purpose, apparently unaware that the alien students were carrying detection equipment worth more than most small starships. "Let me help," Nira offered, thinking she could at least ensure proper, sterile collection procedures. But as she watched Yuna work, Nira realized that the human had no concept of sterile collection. Yuna rinsed the container in the stream itself, then filled it with the organism-rich water, seemingly unconcerned about contamination. "There," Yuna said happily. "Perfect sample. Perfect sample of biological chaos that would require weeks of decontamination procedures to make safe by galactic standards." But Yuna handled it like it was completely harmless. The real shock came when Nira's suit filters began to fail. It started as a small alarm, easily ignored. But within minutes, her environmental systems were working harder and harder to maintain safe conditions inside her suit. Something was getting through the most advanced filtration technology her species had ever developed. "My suit is detecting biological contamination," she told the group, trying not to panic. "Contamination?" Yuna asked, looking concerned. "What kind?" Nira checked her readings, and what she saw made her feel dizzy. "Airborne microorganisms, thousands of different types. They seem to be everywhere." "Oh, you mean bacteria and stuff," Jiho said, relaxing. "Yeah, the air is full of microorganisms. That is totally normal." Normal. The humans lived in an atmosphere that was constantly filled with billions of microscopic organisms, most of which would be deadly to other galactic species. They breathed this biological soup every moment of every day and called it normal. How do you survive constant exposure to so many foreign organisms? Nira asked, genuinely curious, despite her growing fear? Foreign? Yuna looked confused. They are not foreign. Most of them live inside us. Live inside them. The words hit the alien students like a physical blow. These humans were not just surviving exposure to dangerous microorganisms. They were hosting them, voluntarily. Inside you? Vex asked, his rocky form actually backing away from the humans. Sure, Jiho said casually. Humans have trillions of bacteria living in our bodies. We could not survive without them. Trillions, not millions, not billions, but trillions of microorganisms living inside each human body. The alien students tried to process this information and failed. Most galactic species went to enormous lengths to avoid even a single foreign microorganism. Humans carried trillions of them around as part of their normal biology. Nira's suit was losing the battle against Earth's microscopic life. Despite her filtration systems working at maximum capacity, her readings showed that organisms were getting through. She was being slowly contaminated by the very air around the humans. I need to return to the research station, she said, trying to keep her voice calm. My biological systems are not compatible with your atmospheric microorganisms. Of course, Yuna said, immediately concerned for her guest's well-being. We should have thought about that. As they walked back toward the station, Nira's condition continued to deteriorate. The microorganisms that humans breathed every day without concern were attacking her biology like an invading army. Her suit's medical systems were working desperately to counteract the contamination, but they were designed for space travel, not biological warfare. By the time they reached the research station, Nira was barely conscious. Her aquatic biology was shutting down as Earth's microorganisms overwhelmed her immune systems. The station's emergency medical facilities managed to stabilize her, but just barely. I do not understand, Jiho said, watching the medical machines work to save their guest. She was only exposed to normal air, the same air we breathe every day, the same air that was apparently filled with enough biological activity to kill most galactic life forms. While Nira recovered in the medical bay, the other alien students processed what they had learned. Every human is a walking ecosystem, Kyle said quietly. They are not individual organisms. They are colonies. Colonies of trillions of microorganisms that would be deadly to most known life forms, Vex added. And they call it normal, Core finished. When Nira was stable enough to speak, she tried to explain what had happened to her. The microorganisms in your atmosphere, she told Yuna weakly. Some of them are similar to bacteria that live in our deep ocean trenches. We consider them extremely dangerous. They can only survive in our most hostile environments. Really? Yuna said, looking fascinated. That is interesting. What you call hostile, we call normal body temperature. Normal body temperature. The bacteria that Nira's people found in their most dangerous environments were the same type that humans carried inside their bodies as a matter of course. What was deadly to advanced galactic life was completely normal to humans. How do you not die from constant exposure to so many harmful organisms? Nira asked. Yuna thought about this for a moment. Well, they are not harmful to us. Most of them help us digest food, fight off infections, and stay healthy. We have been living with them for millions of years. Millions of years of coevolution with microorganisms that would sterilize most worlds. Humans had not just learned to tolerate Earth's microbial life. They had formed partnerships with it. They had become living planets themselves, each one hosting more biological diversity than most space stations. What happens if you try to remove all the microorganisms from a human? Vex asked, his scientific curiosity overcoming his horror. We get very sick, Jiho replied. Sometimes we die. We need our bacteria to live. They needed them to live. Humans were so adapted to their dangerous world that they required constant exposure to what most species considered deadly contamination. They were not just surviving on a death world, they had become part of it. That evening, as the alien students reviewed their findings, they realized they had discovered something unprecedented in galactic biology. Humans were not just individual organisms. They were walking ecosystems, each one containing more microbial diversity than most planets. We have been thinking about this wrong, Nira said from her medical bed. We keep asking how humans survive on Earth, but that is not the right question. What is the right question? Kale asked. How does Earth survive inside humans? After Nira's recovery from her microbial encounter, Yuna suggested a change of pace for their alien guests. How about we visit the Natural History Museum in Seoul, she proposed. It has excellent displays about Earth's biological history. Much safer than field work. The 5 alien students agreed readily, eager for what sounded like a more controlled learning environment. Museums were universal concepts across galactic civilization, places where knowledge was stored and displayed safely. How dangerous could old bones and historical artifacts possibly be? The journey to Seoul was an education in itself. The alien students watched through the vehicle's reinforced windows as millions of humans moved through their daily lives, completely unprotected by environmental suits or safety equipment. They walked on surfaces that could crack under pressure, breathed air that would corrode most metals, and seemed completely unaware that they were living in conditions that would challenge the most advanced military equipment. 7 million people live in this city, Jiho mentioned casually as they drove through busy streets. All breathing the same air, drinking the same water, sharing the same environment. 7 million organisms of the same species living in close proximity without any biological containment protocols. Most galactic civilizations had to carefully manage population density to prevent disease outbreaks or resource contamination. Humans simply crowded together and somehow made it work. The Natural History Museum was an impressive building that seemed designed to showcase Earth's biological heritage. As they entered, the alien students expected to see carefully preserved specimens and educational displays about peaceful evolutionary development. They were not prepared for what they actually found. The first exhibit hall contained something called the Age of Dinosaurs. The alien students stopped at the entrance, staring in complete shock at the massive skeletons that dominated the space. These were not the remains of small, harmless creatures. These were the bones of monsters. Tyrannosaurus Rex, Yuna read from a display placard. One of the largest land predators that ever lived on Earth, 12 meters long, weighing about 7 tons, with teeth the size of bananas. 12 meters long, 7 tons, teeth the size of bananas. Kyle's crystalline form began to vibrate with terror as he processed these numbers. The skeleton looming above them belonged to a creature that could have destroyed most galactic military vehicles with its bare teeth. These creatures lived on Earth? Vex asked, his rocky form backing away. From the display, oh yes, Jiho said proudly. Dinosaurs ruled the planet for over 160 million years. This one lived about 70 million years ago. 160 million years of creatures that made modern military equipment look fragile. The alien students moved through the dinosaur hall in stunned silence, their sensors recording creatures that should have been impossible. Core stopped in front of a display about something called Triceratops. The three-horned skull was larger than most vehicles, designed for combat that would shame most military engineering. These were herbivores? He asked weakly. Plant-eaters, yes, Yuna confirmed. They had to be heavily armored to protect themselves from the carnivores. Plant-eaters that required armor plating and weapon systems just to survive. What kind of world produced herbivores that looked like tanks? The answer came in the next display about Spinosaurus, a predator that was even larger than Tyrannosaurus Rex, 18 meters long and designed for both land and water hunting. The alien students stared at its massive skull and realized they were looking at a creature that had turned hunting into an art form. How did anything survive with predators? Like this? Nira asked, her voice barely a whisper. Oh, lots of things survived, Yuna said cheerfully. That is how evolution works. The survivors got better at surviving. The casual way she said it made the alien students realize something horrifying. Earth had not produced these monsters by accident. They were the result of millions of years of evolutionary pressure, each generation getting more deadly, more efficient, more impossible to kill. The next section of the museum was even worse. It detailed Earth's mass extinction events, times when the planet had essentially tried to kill everything on it and largely succeeded. The Permian extinction, Jiho read from another display. About 250 million years ago, 90% of all life on Earth died. 90% extinction. Most civilizations would consider losing 10% of their population to be a catastrophic disaster. Earth had lost 90% of all life and somehow continued producing even more dangerous creatures afterward. What caused it? Core asked, afraid of the answer. Massive volcanic eruptions, climate change, ocean acidification, and several other factors all happening at the same time, Yuna explained. The planet basically became uninhabitable for most life forms. But not all. Some creatures had survived conditions that would sterilize most known worlds, and those survivors had become the ancestors of everything that followed. Kale stopped in front of a display about the Cretaceous extinction, the event that had killed the dinosaurs. An asteroid impact with the force of billions of nuclear weapons, followed by years of darkness and climate chaos. It sounded like a military assault designed to destroy all life on a planet. But life survived this too? He asked. Absolutely, Jiho said. Small mammals, birds, some reptiles, lots of plants, and microorganisms. They survived and then evolved to fill all the empty ecological niches, evolved to fill the niches left by monsters. Earth had responded to the destruction of its most dangerous creatures by producing new ones. The cycle of survival and improvement had continued for hundreds of millions of years. The museum's next section focused on more recent evolutionary history, the development of modern Earth life. The alien students learned about creatures that could survive in boiling water, others that thrived in environments with no oxygen, and still others that could repair themselves from almost any injury. Tardigrades, Yuna said, showing them a microscopic image of what looked like a tiny armored bear. They can survive in the vacuum of space, extreme temperatures, radiation that would kill most things, and even being completely dried out for decades. Survive in space. The alien students used the most advanced technology their civilizations had ever developed just to travel between worlds, and Earth had produced microscopic creatures that could survive in space naturally. How many of these impossible creatures exist on Earth? Vex asked. Scientists estimate there are about 8 million different species, Jiho replied, though we have only identified about 1 million so far. 8 million species, each one perfectly adapted to survive in conditions that would challenge most galactic technology. Earth was not just a death world. It was a planet-sized laboratory for producing the most resilient life forms imaginable. But the most shocking revelation came in the final section of the museum, which focused on human evolution. The alien students learned that humans had evolved recently, geologically speaking. They were newcomers to Earth, having developed their current form only about 200,000 years ago. Wait, Kyle said, his crystalline form flickering with confusion. Humans evolved on the same world that produced all these monsters? That is right, Yuna said. We shared the planet with saber-toothed cats, cave bears, dire wolves, and lots of other dangerous megafauna until very recently. Shared the planet with creatures designed to kill them. Humans had not inherited a safe world from which all the dangers had been removed. They had evolved alongside predators that made modern weapons look primitive. How did such fragile creatures survive? Nira asked, looking at a display showing early human remains. We got smart, Jiho said simply. We learned to make tools, work together, and adapt faster than our environment could kill us. Learn to adapt faster than their environment could kill them. The alien students finally understood what made humans so unique. They had not evolved in a safe place, and then moved to a dangerous one. They had evolved in the most dangerous place imaginable and had learned to think their way out of extinction. Every cute animal you have shown us, Kor said slowly. Every bird, every flower, every tree. They are all descendants of creatures that survived multiple mass extinctions. That is right, Yuna said, smiling. Pretty amazing, is it not? Amazing was not the word the alien students would have chosen. Terrifying seemed more appropriate. Every life form on Earth was the product of hundreds of millions of years of evolutionary warfare. Every creature they had seen, no matter how harmless it appeared, was a finely tuned survival machine descended from things that had endured planetary catastrophes. And humans were the newest and most successful graduates of this evolutionary arms race. As they left the museum, the alien students walked in silence, trying to process what they had learned. Earth was not just dangerous because of its current conditions. It was dangerous because it had spent hundreds of millions of years systematically killing off everything that was not perfectly adapted to survive impossible challenges. The humans. Walking around them were not just living on a death world. They were the latest and most successful products of the most competitive evolutionary environment in the known galaxy. The morning after their museum visit, Jiho announced that he and Yuna were going for their daily exercise routine. Just some light jogging and swimming, he said casually. Would you like to observe? It might help you understand human physiology better. The alien students agreed, thinking they would finally see something harmless. Exercise was a universal concept. Controlled physical activity to maintain health. How dangerous could that possibly be? They followed the humans to what Yuna called the university's recreation center. The building contained various rooms filled with strange mechanical devices and open spaces designed for physical activity. To the alien students, It looked like a training facility for military personnel. "We usually start with a warm-up run," Jiho explained, leading them to an outdoor track that circled a large field. "Just 5 kilometers today, nothing too strenuous. 5 kilometers. The alien students checked their translation software to make sure they had heard correctly. 5,000 meters of continuous movement. Most galactic species considered walking a few hundred meters to be significant physical exertion. "You move 5 kilometers without rest?" Kale asked, his crystalline structure vibrating with disbelief. "Oh, this is just our warm-up," Una said, beginning to stretch her muscles in preparation. "We are training for a marathon next month. That is 42 kilometers. 42 kilometers of continuous movement." The number was so absurd that Vex's translation systems actually questioned whether they had malfunctioned. The humans began their run at what they called a comfortable pace. To the alien students, it looked like they were fleeing from mortal danger. Their legs moved in rapid, coordinated motions that propelled them forward at speeds that would require mechanical assistance for most galactic species. But what truly shocked the observers was not the speed, but the duration. Jiho and Una continued this rapid movement for over 30 minutes without stopping, without slowing down, without showing any signs of system failure. "Their cardiovascular systems," Nira whispered, her sensors tracking the humans' vital signs. "They are operating at efficiency levels that should not be possible for organic life." The humans were not just moving fast. They were breathing rapidly and deeply, processing the oxygen-rich atmosphere that would burn through most alien respiratory systems. Their hearts were pumping the corrosive blood through their bodies at rates that would overload most mechanical systems. "How much oxygen are they consuming?" Kor asked, watching in fascination as the humans continued their seemingly endless run. "About 15 times their resting rate," Nira reported. "And their bodies are somehow processing all of it without any apparent damage from oxidation. 15 times normal oxygen consumption. Most galactic species had to carefully regulate their oxygen intake to prevent cellular damage. Humans were voluntarily increasing their consumption to levels that would be immediately lethal to most known life forms. After completing their 5-kilometer run, the humans showed no signs of exhaustion that would concern them. They were breathing heavily and sweating, apparently leaking water through their skin as a cooling mechanism, but they seemed ready to continue. "Good run," Jiho said cheerfully. "Ready for some swimming?" Swimming. The alien students followed, the humans to an indoor pool filled with clear water. The very idea of voluntarily immersing themselves in liquid was terrifying to most of them. Water was heavy, dense, and would crush most galactic life forms if they tried to move through it. "Water is about 800 times denser than air," Vex said, calculating the physics involved. "How do you move through such a heavy medium?" "You just swim," Una explained, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. Like this. She dove into the pool with fluid grace, her body cutting through the water like it was designed for aquatic movement. Within seconds, she was moving through the heavy liquid at speeds that seemed impossible for a creature with no natural swimming adaptations. The alien students watched in amazement as both humans propelled themselves through the water using only their arms and legs. No mechanical assistance, no breathing apparatus, no protective equipment. They simply moved through the dense medium as if they belonged there. "They are holding their breath," Nira said, her aquatic biology making her particularly sensitive to the impossibility of what she was witnessing. "They are moving through water without breathing for extended periods. Most galactic species required constant atmospheric processing to survive. The idea of voluntarily stopping breathing while engaged in strenuous physical activity was beyond comprehension. Jiho surfaced after swimming 50 meters underwater. "The pool is nice today," he said, apparently unaffected by what should have been a life-threatening experience. Perfect temperature for distance swimming. Distance swimming. They were planning to continue this impossible activity for extended periods. For the next hour, the alien students watched as the humans swam back and forth across the pool, covering what Yuna estimated as about 2 kilometers. 2,000 meters of movement through a medium that was 800 times denser than air, using only their natural body mechanics. "Their efficiency in water is remarkable," Nira observed. "They move almost like they evolved for aquatic environments." "But they are clearly terrestrial organisms," Kor pointed out. "How do they have adaptations for multiple environments?" The answer came when they returned to dry land and Jiho mentioned their exercise routine for the rest of the week. "Tomorrow we have rock climbing," he said. "Thursday is cycling, about 50 kilometers through the mountains. Saturday we are planning a hiking trip, maybe 15 kilometers with full packs. Rock climbing, moving vertically up stone surfaces using only hands and feet. Cycling 50 kilometers through mountainous terrain. Hiking 15 kilometers while carrying additional weight." Each activity sounded like a specialized military training exercise. "Do all humans engage in such extreme physical activities?" Kyle asked. "This is not extreme," Yuna laughed. "This is just staying in shape. Some people do much more intense activities. More intense than covering dozens of kilometers through various terrains using only their natural body mechanics." The alien students tried to imagine what humans considered truly challenging physical activity and failed. "What would you consider extreme exercise?" Vex asked cautiously. "Well, there are things like ultra-marathons," Jiho said thoughtfully. "Those can be over 100 kilometers, or mountain climbing, where people spend days climbing vertical rock faces. Some people do Ironman competitions, that is swimming 4 kilometers, cycling 180 kilometers, then running 42 kilometers all in one day. 180 kilometers. The alien students' translation systems began displaying error messages because the numbers seemed too large to be referring to voluntary physical activity. "And people do this for enjoyment?" Nira asked weakly. "Sure," Yuna said. "It feels good to push your limits. Humans like challenges. Like challenges. Not just tolerate them, not just survive them, but actively seek them out. Humans voluntarily subjected themselves to physical stresses that would challenge most mechanical systems. What happens when humans do not engage in regular physical challenges?" Kor asked, scientific curiosity overcoming his shock. "We get weak and sick," Jiho replied. "Our bodies need regular stress to stay healthy. Without exercise, our muscles atrophy, our bones become brittle, and our cardiovascular systems become inefficient. Need regular stress to stay healthy. Most galactic species went to great lengths to minimize physical stress on their bodies. Humans required it to function properly. You are saying that your biology demands regular exposure to conditions that would damage most known life forms?" Vex asked. "I guess so," Yuna said. "We need to work our bodies hard to keep them working well. It is just how human physiology evolved. Evolved to require constant challenge." The alien students finally understood. Another piece of the human puzzle. These creatures had not just adapted to survive on a death world. They had adapted to need the constant stress that their dangerous environment provided. "On your homeworlds," Jiho asked curiously, "what do you do for exercise?" The alien students looked at each other awkwardly. Most of their species considered any unnecessary movement to be wasteful and potentially dangerous. The idea of voluntarily increasing physical stress was completely foreign to them. "We do not," Kale admitted. "Our bodies are designed to minimize energy expenditure and avoid unnecessary stress." "That sounds really unhealthy," Yuna said with genuine concern. "How do you maintain muscle mass and bone density without regular exercise?" The question revealed another fundamental difference between humans and most galactic life. Other species had evolved to be as efficient as possible, to survive by using minimal resources and avoiding all unnecessary risks. Humans had evolved to thrive on risk, to require constant challenge to maintain their health. "We are beginning to understand," Nira said slowly, "that human bodies are not designed for safety and efficiency. They are designed for performance, under stress." "Performance under stress?" Jiho repeated. "I guess that makes sense. Life on Earth has always been challenging. We had to be able to perform well under pressure to survive." That evening, after witnessing the humans' impossible physical capabilities, Jiho and Yuna decided to share some of their favorite entertainment with their alien guests. "We thought you might enjoy watching some movies," Yuna said, setting up a large display screen in the research station's common area. "They are a good way to understand human culture." The alien students settled in to watch, expecting to see peaceful cultural expressions, perhaps stories about cooperation and harmony. Most galactic entertainment focused on problem-solving, learning, and social bonding in safe environments. The first movie Jiho selected was something he called an action-adventure film. Within the first few minutes, the alien students were watching humans voluntarily putting themselves in mortal danger for the purpose of entertainment. The main character was running across rooftops, jumping between buildings separated by gaps that would be instantly fatal if missed. He was being chased by other humans who were shooting projectile weapons at him, apparently trying to kill him. And somehow, the audience was supposed to find this enjoyable. "This human is in extreme danger," Kyle observed, his crystalline form flickering with anxiety as he watched the character leap across another seemingly impossible gap. "Oh yes," Jiho said happily. "That is what makes it exciting. The more dangerous the situation, the more fun it is to watch." Fun. Humans found mortal, peril entertaining. The concept was so alien that several of the students' translation programs began displaying error messages. The movie continued with increasingly impossible situations. The character survived explosions that should have vaporized him, falls that should have shattered every bone in his body, and combat with multiple opponents simultaneously. And through it all, he seemed to be enjoying himself. "Do humans actually do these things?" Nira asked, watching the character swing from a helicopter using only a rope. "Not usually," Yuna laughed. "But some people do similar activities for fun. Bungee jumping, skydiving, extreme sports. People like the adrenaline rush. The humans had a biological response to danger that they actively sought out because it felt good. They had turned their fear response into a recreational drug." The next movie was even more disturbing. It was what Yuna called a disaster film, which apparently meant humans entertaining themselves by watching their own species face extinction-level events. The story involved a massive earthquake destroying an entire city, while the main characters tried to survive. Buildings collapsed, the ground split open, and millions of people died in graphic detail. The alien students watched in horror as humans observed simulated catastrophes for enjoyment. "Why would you create entertainment about disasters?" Core asked his mandibles clicking nervously. "It is thrilling," Jiho explained. "We like to imagine how we would handle extreme situations. Plus, the special effects are amazing." They enjoyed imagining themselves in life-threatening situations. Most galactic species had nightmares about such scenarios. Humans turned them into recreational fantasies. "What about peaceful entertainment?" Vex asked hopefully. "Do you have stories about harmony and cooperation?" "Sure," Yuna said, selecting another film. "Here is a romantic comedy." The romantic comedy turned out to involve humans pursuing relationships through a series of increasingly complicated and stressful situations. Characters lied to each other, created elaborate deceptions, and put themselves through emotional turmoil. That would require psychological treatment for most galactic species. "They seem to be causing each other significant psychological distress," Nira observed, watching two characters argue intensely about their relationship. "That is just drama," Jiho said. "Conflict makes the story interesting. Without problems to overcome, it would be boring. Boring. Humans considered peaceful, harmonious relationships to be boring. They needed conflict and stress to find their own stories entertaining." The evening continued with more revelations about human psychology. They learned about something called horror movies, where humans paid money to be frightened by images of death and destruction. They discovered sports, where humans competed against each other in activities that involved intentional physical contact and the risk of injury. You have competitions where the goal is to physically overpower other humans? Kale asked, watching something called boxing where two people repeatedly struck each other until one could no longer continue. "Boxing is a sport," Yuna explained. "Both fighters agree to the rules. It is about skill, strategy, and endurance. Skill at inflicting and receiving damage. Strategy for hurting other humans. Endurance for withstanding assault, and they called it entertainment." "What about your mythology?" Vex asked, hoping that ancient human stories might reveal a more peaceful aspect of their culture. "What do your people traditionally fear?" Jiho pulled up images of various mythological creatures from human history. Dragons, demons, monsters, and other terrifying beings that had populated human imagination for thousands of years. The alien students examined these mythological horrors and realized something that chilled them to their cores. Every single creature that humans had invented to represent ultimate evil and terror was less dangerous than the actual environment they lived in every day. "Your dragons breathe fire," Nira said slowly. "But your volcanoes produce much more destructive force. Your demons are immortal and powerful," Kor added. "But your bacteria are more persistent and deadly." "Your monsters are huge and frightening," Zin finished. "But your weather systems carry more energy than all of them combined." The humans had created fictional horrors that were actually less threatening than their real daily existence. Their imagination had failed to conceive of anything more dangerous than the world they already lived on. "I never thought about it that way," Yuna said, considering their observations. "I guess we are used to living with dangerous things, so our monsters had to be different rather than just more dangerous. Used to living with dangerous things." The casual way she said it revealed the most terrifying aspect of human psychology yet discovered. Humans did not just survive constant danger. They had become so accustomed to it that they needed to invent new forms of threat to feel properly challenged. "What do humans consider to be the worst possible experience?" Vex asked, dreading the answer. "Boredom," Jiho said immediately. "Being trapped somewhere safe with nothing challenging to do. That is torture for most people." Boredom. The thing most galactic species considered to be the ideal state, safety, comfort, and lack of stimulation, was what humans considered torture. You mean humans suffer when they are not being challenged or threatened? Kale asked. Absolutely, Una confirmed. We need goals to work toward, problems to solve, challenges to overcome. Without those things, we become depressed and anxious. Become depressed and anxious when safe. The alien students finally understood the deepest psychological truth about humans. They had not just adapted to survive on a death world, they had become psychologically dependent on the stress and challenge that such an environment provided. This explains so much, Nira said quietly. Your entertainment, your sports, your voluntary physical challenges. You actively seek out the conditions that most species try to avoid. Well, when you put it that way, it does sound strange, Jiho admitted. But life without challenges would not really be living, would it? What would be the point of existing if nothing ever tested your abilities? What would be the point of existing without constant testing? Most galactic civilizations had spent thousands of years trying to eliminate testing and challenge from their lives. Humans could not conceive of meaningful existence without them. The evening's final revelation came when Una showed them something called extreme sports videos. Humans voluntarily jumping from aircraft, climbing vertical rock faces without safety equipment, and racing vehicles at speeds that would be instantly fatal if anything went wrong. These people could die doing these activities, Kor observed. That is part of the appeal, Jiho explained. The possibility of real consequences makes the challenge meaningful. Without risk, it would just be going through motions. Without risk, life was just going through motions. Humans needed the possibility of failure, injury, or death to feel truly alive. They had turned survival itself into a recreational activity. Do you understand now? Una asked. Why we love our planet so much? Earth gives us everything we need. Constant challenges, endless variety, and the opportunity to test ourselves against real consequences. The alien students did understand, and the understanding terrified them. Humans did not tolerate their death world despite its dangers. They loved it because of those dangers. They had formed an emotional bond with the very forces that would destroy most other life forms. You are not just adapted to survive on Earth, Nira said slowly. You are addicted to it. Addicted to challenge, to risk, to the possibility of failure, Kyle added. You have turned survival into entertainment, Vex concluded. As the evening ended and the alien students retired to their quarters, they realized they had discovered the most alien aspect of human psychology. These creatures had evolved beyond simple survival. They had developed a psychological need for the very conditions that made survival difficult. They were not just the ultimate survivors. They were survivors who could not bear to live in safety. On their final morning at the research station, the 5 alien students sat together in the common area, preparing their final reports for their home worlds. Each had filled hundreds of pages with observations, measurements, and analyses of their time on Earth. But none of them felt capable of truly explaining what they had discovered. Jiho and Una joined them for breakfast, unaware that their simple presence was still unsettling to beings who now understood exactly how impossible their existence should be. How will you explain us to your people? Una asked, genuinely curious about how their alien guests viewed humanity. The students looked at each other, each struggling with the same problem. How could they describe a species that thrived in conditions that would kill most galactic life? Instantly? How could they explain creatures who had turned survival into art? When we first arrived, Kyle said slowly, we thought Earth was classified as a death world because it had dangerous conditions that you somehow survived despite being weak. But that was completely wrong, Nira continued. Earth is not dangerous, despite having life. Earth is dangerous because it has life. Every organism we have encountered, Vex added, from the smallest bacteria to the largest trees, represents the end result of hundreds of millions of years of evolutionary warfare. Jiho and Yuna exchanged glances, beginning to understand how their alien guests saw their world. You make it sound like Earth is trying to kill everything, Yuna said. It is, Kor replied seriously. Constantly. Your weather systems carry more energy than our weapons. Your atmosphere is corrosive to most known materials. Your very ground is unstable and moves without warning. Your planet experiences regular extinction events that would sterilize most worlds, Zin added. And life here does not just survive them. It gets stronger because of them. The humans listened with growing amazement as the alien students described their world through galactic eyes. We kept asking the wrong question, Nira explained. We kept asking how you survive on such a dangerous planet. But Earth is not dangerous to you. Earth is home. You did not conquer your world, Kale continued. You became partners with it. You learned to work with forces that would destroy most civilizations. Your bodies host trillions of microorganisms that most species would consider biological weapons, Vex said. But you call them essential for health. You breathe an atmosphere that would corrode our equipment, Kor added. But you call it refreshing. You live under constant bombardment by solar radiation, Zin noted. But you call it beautiful sunshine. Jiho was quiet for a moment, processing this alien perspective on his everyday existence. So what you are saying is that what seems normal to us is actually impossible by galactic standards. Not impossible, Nira corrected. Unprecedented. No other known species has achieved what humans have achieved. Which is what exactly? Yuna asked. The alien students looked at each other, realizing they had reached the heart of their discovery. You have achieved perfect adaptation, Kale said. Not adaptation to a safe environment, but adaptation to constant change and challenge. Most species evolve to fit one specific ecological niche, Nira explained. You evolved to fit every niche on your planet simultaneously. You can survive in environments from frozen wastelands to burning deserts, Vex noted. You can move through air, water, and across solid ground with equal facility. You have turned your planet's violence into your strength, Kor added. Every force that should destroy you instead makes you more resilient. You do not just survive adversity, Zin concluded. You require it to function properly. The humans sat quietly, seeing themselves through truly alien eyes for the first time. But how is that possible? Jiho asked. How did we become so different from other galactic species? Because Earth is different from other worlds, Kale replied. Most planets that support life are stable, predictable places. Species evolve to maximize efficiency in stable conditions. Earth never allowed that, Nira continued. Your planet changed constantly. Climate shifts, geological upheavals, asteroid impacts, ice ages. Nothing stayed the same long enough for life to become complacent. So life here evolved to handle change itself, Vex added. Not to be perfectly adapted to one set of conditions, but to be adaptable to any conditions. Humans represent the ultimate expression of that evolutionary strategy, Core noted. You are the first species we have encountered that is adapted for adaptation itself. The concept hung in the air as both humans and aliens contemplated its implications. What does this mean for Earth's relationship with the galactic community? Yuna asked. The alien students had been dreading this question. Their discoveries about humanity had profound implications for galactic civilization. It means everything we thought we knew about the limits of biological possibility was wrong, Kale said carefully. Humans represent capabilities that our science said were impossible. Most galactic species will be terrified of you, Nira admitted. Not because you are aggressive, but because you are living proof that our understanding of life is incomplete. You survive in conditions that would kill us, Vex explained. You thrive on challenges that would destroy our civilizations. You have turned a death world into a garden. But that is not the frightening part, Core continued. The frightening part is that you did it by becoming partners with the forces that should have killed you. You have shown that there is another way to evolve, Zin added. Not by avoiding danger, but by embracing it. Not by seeking safety, but by finding strength in adversity. Jiho leaned forward, understanding dawning in his eyes. You think other species will see us as a threat to their way of life? Some will, Kale admitted. Your very existence challenges everything most civilizations believe about survival and progress. But others will see opportunity, Nira said hopefully. Humans could teach the galaxy how to face challenges that our current approaches cannot handle. What kind of challenges? Yuna asked. The alien students exchanged meaningful glances. They had not planned to reveal this information, but their time on Earth had changed their perspective on many things. The galaxy faces problems that our current civilizations cannot solve, Vex said slowly. Climate changes on established worlds, resource depletion, biological contamination, asteroid impacts. Most species respond to such challenges by fleeing to safer worlds, Core explained. But there are not enough safe worlds for everyone. Humans represent a different approach, Zin noted. Instead of running from dangerous conditions, you have learned to adapt to them. You could teach us how to turn problems into opportunities, Nira added, how to find strength in situations that we currently see only as threats. The human sat quietly, processing the implications of what they were hearing. So our role in galactic civilization would be as teachers? Jiho asked. Teachers, advisors, problem solvers, Kale replied. You have spent your entire evolutionary history learning to handle impossible situations. That experience is invaluable. But there would be risks, Vex cautioned. Many species would prefer to maintain their current approaches rather than learn new ones. And some might see human adaptability as a competitive threat, Core added, which is why our reports will be so important, Nira said. We need to help. Our people understand that humans are not dangerous because they are predators. They are remarkable because they are survivors. Survivors who could help all of us become better at surviving, Zin concluded. As the morning progressed toward their departure time, the alien students completed their final observations. They watched Jiho and Yuna go about their normal routines, breathing corrosive air, moving through crushing gravity, processing information at speeds that challenged most computers. One final question, Kyle said as they prepared to leave. Do humans realize how extraordinary they are? Jiho and Yuna looked at each other and laughed. We are just people, Yuna said. We do what we have to do to live our lives. Everyone seems extraordinary when you get to know them, Jiho added. I bet. Your species have amazing capabilities that you take for granted, too. The alien students realized that this casual humility was perhaps the most remarkable thing about humans yet. They had achieved the impossible and considered it normal. They had turned a death world into home and thought everyone could do the same. As the transport ship arrived to take the alien students back to their homeworlds, both groups stood together outside the research station. The humans breathed the morning air deeply, enjoying the start of another day on their dangerous, beautiful planet. The aliens checked their environmental suits one final time, preparing to leave the most hostile environment they had ever survived. Thank you for showing us your world, Kyle said formally. We have learned more than we expected. Thank you for visiting, Yuna replied. It was wonderful to see Earth through your eyes. As the alien students boarded their transport, they carried with them reports that would change galactic civilizations' understanding of life itself. They had come to study primitive humans on a dangerous world. They were leaving as witnesses to the most successful adaptation in known biological history.